our body talks to us and our body tells us things.
Oh,
We
yeah.
just have to make sure that we're listening to it. And I think a lot of times we find that the people who are those overdoers, the signs are likely there. It's just whether or not we're listening to them. And sometimes it is a matter of slowing down to listen to your body and to listen to those signs. And then when you do that, they start to become more present. Pain as we age is common, but it's not normal. As we get older, we're not supposed to be in pain. I think that just as we get older, the habits that we've created as a society lead us to experiencing more pain. So, if anything, as we get older, we should be encouraging people to lift weights and not shying away from it. If we do these things and if we are proactive about it, I think we would see a lot more people in this world without pain, especially as they get older.
We are about to embark on an immersive journey through the corridors of our minds. Stand by as we prepare for departure.
Welcome aboard, everyone, to the Productivity with Peace of Mind podcast adventure. Our journey will begin in just a moment. Inhale deeply and exhale. Our voyage takes us on a captivating tour, diving deep into the intricate layers of our thoughts and imagination. Brace yourselves for the complexities of our evolution. For a safe and enjoyable journey, stay seated. Secure your helmet and protective goggles, and keep hands, feet, and legs inside while the ride is moving. Now relax and enjoy.
What if I told you that aging and growing older doesn't automatically mean more pain? I know. A lot of us think that that is just part of the process, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. And there is so much in our control so that we can spend as much of our life as possible how we want to spend it and feeling as good as we possibly can as we do age. And with today's guest, we go over the details and the to-dos on how to go ahead and do that. You definitely want to take some notes on this one. So without further ado, let's go to the conversation. Today we have with us Britni Barber, Doctor of Physical Therapy. She focuses on pain-free performance strength coaching and is the founder of Rise Performance and Physical Therapy. The theme that we talked about when planning for this episode, which I really, really love because it actually gives us hope and it puts us in that driver's seat, like we talk about a lot, is that pain as we age is common, but it's not necessarily normal. And she shares an analogy about when we're in college, like when we're in our 20s, like we could stay out all night and super late into the morning and then bounce back the next day. But as we age, recovery requires more intention. So we'll ask her a little bit more about that analogy. Welcome, Brittany. It's so great to have you here today.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So, do you want to tell us a little bit about the college analogy that you and I had talked about?
Yeah, sure. So, when we talked previously about this analogy, we talked about how when you are in your early 20s, a lot of us usually around that time are in college, or maybe we're not in college, but we're still maybe living a similar lifestyle where we tend to stay up a little later. We potentially are going out, potentially having drinks. We are probably eating dorm food if we're living at college. If we're not, we probably don't have a ton of money. So, we're not spending a ton of money on, quality food all the time. And we essentially are just, maybe not treating our bodies the best, but we are still at an age where we're very lucky enough to still be able to go out, stay up late, drink, not eat great food, and we can wake up the next day and meet our friends out for a hike or go work out in the gym or go play, a pickup volleyball game or something like that. And it doesn't really affect us that much. And then when we get older, if we fast forward maybe 10 years, then we start to notice if I even just stay up too late, the next day I wake up and I'm feeling it. Or if I, am traveling or I don't eat that well, or if I go out and have even 1 to 2 drinks the next day, like it is affecting my body a lot more than, you know, all of these things combined used to in my 20s. And this starts to impact and affect recovery. It starts to impact performance and just how we feel on a day-to-day basis. And I think that when we start to hit that age, whether it's like late 20s, mid to late 30s, like whatever time frame it starts to feel like it's encroaching on you, we start to think like, oh, I'm just getting older. My body just can't handle things anymore. Or, you know, like this is just how it is now because I'm a certain age. And that kind of thought process that like, oh, it's just all downhill from here. And that's not necessarily true. A lot of people think that as they get older, like these things start to affect our mobility, they start to affect our strength, they start to affect, you know, those nagging aches and pains that seem to pop up every once in a while. And we just think that it's a part of the aging process. And of course, a little bit of it could be genetics too, but a large part of it is just when we think about 10 years ago, when we were maybe in our early to mid 20s, we didn't have to try as hard to take care of our bodies because we were still lucky enough to be young enough to where we kind of sort of recovered automatically without even really needing to try. And so sometimes what I find is that when we're in our, you know, early, mid, late 30s, early 40s, we're expecting our body to still respond the same way as it used to when we were in our early 20s. And it's just not going to anymore. Where recovery used to be automatic and we didn't even have to try or think about it, now we have to be a little bit more intentional about it. We have to put a little bit more effort in, and we kind of have to think about what we're doing before we do it. So if we know we have, you know, a big hike we want to do on Saturday or Sunday morning, or we know we want to really prioritize like strength training this week, we have to go into that week preparing our bodies in other ways outside of the gym than we may not have needed to think about before, or vice versa. We just came from a big snowboarding trip or whatever it may be. Maybe you're prioritizing stretching, mobility, recovering. You're making sure you're eating enough food after. You're prioritizing protein, hydration, electrolytes, because you know now that you have to take care of your body a little bit more post this big snowboard trip than you would have 20 years ago, where you might have been able to, you know, go hang out the next day, Monday, and not even think about what you did the weekend before.
Totally. And it's just so very real because I know it hit me hard as, you know, as like a kind of a high achiever and like wanting to do a lot of things. Like I'm passionate about so many different things. I always want to be doing all these different things. And as time passed and it got harder, I mean, there was, again, like you talked about, like genetics and like, you know, there's some like health lineage things in there as well. But still, I'm also aging at the same time. Right. And so, like, as that got harder, that was such a difficult reality for me to swallow. But learning that, like, oh, no, I don't actually have to like stop what I like doing. I just have to do it more intentionally. That was so encouraging. And so I love that you know, teach that and explain that because I think it helps us really realize that like whatever goals we have, whatever it is like we're, you know, excited about, we want to go after, we can still do it just a little bit differently. So I love how you word that.
Yeah, exactly.
So as we look at like specifically at pain, that's another part of getting older that people think is just normal or like how it should be or what's to be expected, I guess. And when you look at the not just like how we do things or how difficult it is or doing things differently or more intentionally, but just feeling pain or feeling more uncomfortable, you kind of debunk that that's not necessarily true. So tell us more about that.
Yeah. So if you are a part of or familiar with or well versed in the rehab world, you might have heard this saying before, but pain as we age is common, but it's not normal. Meaning that if you start to notice, you know, my knees start to feel achy as I go up and down the stairs, or as I, you know, get in and out of a chair, my back starts to hurt a little bit more when I get up in the morning. All of these things that you may think kind of just come with aging and getting older, probably because your parents or your grandparents have also kind of complained about the same things. Your friends are maybe starting to complain about the same things. And you just think that, okay, because it's happening to everyone else around me, this is just what I should expect to happen to me too. And then you throw on top of that I used to play sports when I was younger, so I like ran my body into the ground per se, or like, other things like that. You throw that on top of it, people just think that as they get older, this is just the price they're paying for the way they lived in their younger years, or because, it's just a part of getting older, and none of that necessarily is true. As we get older, we're not supposed to be in pain. I think that just as we get older, the habits that we've created as a society lead us to experiencing more pain. The older that you get, the more people will tell you, okay, like you shouldn't lift weights. You're over 30 years old. Or, you go to the doctors for knee pain and they tell you, well, like just stop squatting if that hurts. Just stop, lifting weights if your knees hurt. And then that'll solve the problem. When in actuality, all that does is really make everything worse. If we think about just what we call like functional movement patterns, these are things like a squat, a lunge, a deadlift. And that's the one thing too, with especially deadlifting and back pain. It's actually been proven to be one of the absolute best things you can do for back pain in research. It's been studied and it is really good for your back. Now, of course, the way you approach it, you want to be smart about it. You're not going to go deadlift, 100 pounds, 200 pounds the first time you go out there, but relearning the hinge movement pattern, which is the main movement pattern related to a deadlift, and slowly learning to load that over time while you're strengthening supporting structures that surround the low back and hips. And if you have trouble with that, that's where you would probably seek out professional help. But learning how to do those things is actually one of the best things you can do for your back. But our doctors are telling us, just avoid this if it hurts, or just stop doing that movement pattern where we use and, perform these movements every day in our lives, whether we like, think we're doing a squat or think we're doing a deadlift. But when most people go to pick up a piece of paper or their shoe off the ground, they're doing some form of a deadlift. And every time you go to like get up and off a chair or the toilet, you're doing a squat. So we do these movement patterns every single day in our lives. So if we are told, or, we shy away from because we're nervous or scared to do these things, to train these things, to get stronger in these movement patterns, it only makes us progressively weaker in them because we're consciously avoiding them. So I think the way our society handles pain and pain with aging kind of contributes to the frequency of people you see with pain, the commonality, how would you say, just like contributes to how common it is to see people walking around with pain as they age.
Mm.
Not to say that it's normal, but it's happening a lot. And I think that part of that is due to just the way our society handles pain and handles the thought of getting older. But opposite of that, if we are being proactive about how we are taking care of our bodies, if we are being proactive about, maintaining like basic muscle mass, which muscle mass is one of the best things you can have in order to help protect your joints. So if anything, as we get older, we should be encouraging people to lift weights and not shying away from it. If we do these things and if we are proactive about it, I think we would see a lot more people in this world without pain, especially as they get older.
Totally. And, this analogy of like, so have you read Younger Next Year?
No, I haven't.
It's so good. But he talks about in that book how it's kind of like when you're talking about like those younger years where, it feels easier, you feel like you can bounce back. He calls that like the tidal wave being in your favor. And so, I just love that analogy. And I love that there's so much information out there now that says like, yeah, lift when you're older, like do it safely, but do it. Like, don't stop. Like, don't stop just because it hurts, because oftentimes, to your point, is it can actually help the pain. And so I love that, so many more people are learning that and identifying that, because it's just so important. It's not that we can't do it anymore. It's that tide is not in our favor anymore.
Yeah, exactly. That's another great analogy.
I love that you talked about also how when we think like, oh, when I was younger, I, was just really hard on my body. So that's why I feel this way. That was mine So, I was a competitive dancer. I was very active. I would train hours and hours every day, hardly slept, hardly ate, like, all the things, purged what I did eat, all, all of that, right? Just all the ways you could be horrible to your body. And I really felt like, oh, I was just hard on my body. And then I find myself in my early 30s at the Mayo Clinic talking to a doctor, and he's like, you should not feel head to toe pain all the time in your 30s. That's not normal. And I was like, what? Like, it was so shocking to me because I truly believe that that was just my, you know, consequence to pay.
Yeah, and you see a lot of other people, especially like dancers and soccer players and other athletes that maybe played into high school or college and fast forward 10 years and they're like, okay, this is just it now because
Yeah.
I played sports in my teens and my 20s, because I had fun. And, that's the price I pay for doing that. And that doesn't have to be the case. You can learn how to support your body better, maybe because some of the things you went through and, sports you played in the past, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're doomed to live a life of pain because you played sports in high school and college.
Absolutely. So how do things like movement, like we're talking about, or, sleep, nutrition, stress management, things like that, like we're talking about, like we got to be more intentional. We have to, do things a little bit more differently. Why are those now like non-negotiable or like so critical to not miss now? Like, okay, maybe we could get away with it for a while with that, with that tide, but now we can't. Why is that?
I think a lot of it really does just come from our body and just kind of how our body processes things and how our body responds to our environment, responds to our activities throughout the day, throughout the week, now compared to when we're younger. It's almost like this is normal. Like what we're experiencing right now is actually normal. This is how it's supposed to be. We just get this hall pass when we're in our 20s, and we expect to have that hall pass for the rest of our lives. We expect to have that privilege like that we have in our 20s for the rest of our lives. But it really is just that, like, you have that privilege because you are, 20, 21, 22 years old, that eventually does start to kind of wear out over time. But actually what we experience now, like, is normal, is how it should be. We shouldn't expect to stay up late every single night and be able to perform our best in the gym. We shouldn't expect to eat crappy food and not fuel our body properly and not feel run down or like our body is getting injured all the time. If we want to be able to show up and perform and feel our best, we have to take care of our body to do that. It's almost like you have to put in what you expect to get out.
Right. Well, it's like, I mean, it's a, age-old analogy, but when you look at your car, like you don't just expect your car to drive. When you
Mhm.
kind of compare that to what you were just saying, it's like, you're like, no, I know I need to fill up my car when the tank is empty. Like that's what I need to do, or it literally won't drive. And I think we reach a point in our body and it kind of functions similarly to that all of a sudden, and we're like, wait a minute.
Yeah. And just like the analogy where you mentioned you have to fill up your tank if you want to expect to be able to drive your car. As a car gets older, like it needs more maintenance on it. Not to say that, I mean, I have a Honda CRV, like I've had it for 5, 6 years now, but I know so many people when I got that car that was like, I've had mine for like 10, 15 years. Like those cars are so great. They're so reliable. But if I, 5 years from now, when the car is 10 years old, said, hey, like, why am I doing maintenance twice a year to my car? I didn't used to have to do that. I was like, well, the car's 10 years older now. And it's a great car. It runs really well. It probably still will run really well in 5 years from now when it's 10 years old. But I wouldn't expect to not have to keep up with the maintenance along the way and continue to do maintenance on it if I wanted it to run and operate and last as long as everybody else is telling me Honda CRVs last.
Yeah. Well, I love the pressure that that takes off of it too, because it's not like you need to be able to like like it makes it normal. It's not like you have to be like, oh, I have to keep up or I have to do a certain amount of, things in amount of time without refueling or taking care of myself. It almost gives you permission. I know we don't need permission. That sounds like horrible, but it gives your inner critic the permission to like stop harping on yourself or
Mhm.
feeling that shame or guilt for not doing more, to then be able to slow down and rest.
Yeah. And that's another really big one too, because a lot of the people I work with, and I'm sure like a lot of your audience too, because I know like we've talked about this, we're both these type of people where we are business owners, we are high level achievers. And it's so easy for us to be like go, 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 go all the time that I find with myself personally and with a lot of the people I work with, I'm almost encouraging more of that rest time in their day to day life where I'm like, okay, maybe we don't do 6 hard, high intensity workouts per week and try to go like hiking this weekend. And, you know, the same week we have like 2 huge projects at work that are due and we're barely sleeping at night. Like maybe we don't try to do all of that in one week because your nervous system is literally just going to be overloaded. And at that point, it does put you at like more risk of injury or pain. It does put you at more of a risk for your nervous system just to become like out of whack, which can cause a whole other host of problems in your body. And so if we, I feel like with more than anything, I'm encouraging the people I work with to take more time to like feel into their body, feel what their body needs, slow down a little bit, which mentally sometimes that's the hardest part for people is just to take that time to slow down and take care of your body, even when sometimes it may be hard to acknowledge that that's doing less sometimes.
Yeah, well, and I think it helps us feel better longer. Like it's not just about like living longer, right? It's about like how do we feel good as long as possible? And like when you talk about your Honda CR-V and you're like, I want this to last a certain amount of years, but it's like, okay, are you gonna stop maintaining it half of the time that you are supposed to and like find yourself on the side of the road all the time? Or
Mm-hmm.
because it's like breaking down, or do you want it to run well, have, successful road trips, whatever you want to do with your car, right? Like
Yeah.
get where you want to go, feeling good and safe and confident that you can get there versus like, oh, when is it going to all of a sudden sputter out? When is it going to all of
Mm-hmm.
a sudden crash? Right? Versus like feeling confident, like, yeah, no, I rested, I took care of myself. And I know that this thing here that I chose it intentionally and I'm going to get through it because I'm prepared.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like this story keeps coming up more and more now recently this year because I keep talking to my patients about it when they ask me about like what my plans this year are. But at the end of the year, I'm going to South Carolina to visit with my family, my great grandmother who's turning 100 years old this year.
Mhm.
And I feel like when I bring this story up, I get asked like, "Oh my gosh, like, would you want to live to be 100?" Like, that's crazy. We don't see that many people living that long nowadays anymore, I feel like. But I always say like, it depends. If I'm like, she is still kicking it at 100
Yeah.
years old. Like she, walks with a walker sometimes, but like not really, not all the time. I think last time I was over there a couple years ago, she cooked us like a full dinner and she's pretty much all there mentally too. So if I, can be like her when I'm 100 years old, then yeah, I want to live to be 100. But if I, you know, can't enjoy my life, then that's a different story. And I think, no matter what age you are, like we want to be able to enjoy our life. We want to be able to have a good quality of life. And I think when we take into consideration like some of the lifestyle changes or habits that we may need or want to make now, when we think about them being like a potential burden or, things that we might not ideally want to consider as factors for change or growth, if we think about like what do we want our lives to look like, not only today, but 5, 10, 20 years down the line, I always say like it's a lifestyle, like pain management, being able to do what you want on a day-to-day basis, feel your best, show up your best, like that is a lifestyle. And if you want that lifestyle, you have to buy in or lean into like what that lifestyle, what it's going to take for you to live that lifestyle. And not to say that it has to be the same for everybody, not to say that you have to follow one particular person and everything they do. You can take what works for you, but figure out exactly that, what works for you, and implement it in your life, and just do what you feel like and you know that you're doing is best for the outcome and desires that you want for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, and when we look at it as like a lifestyle change or like it's a way that we manage ourselves in our lives like long term so that we can feel good. Like I don't know about other people, but for me it felt really daunting because I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I have to do this forever." Like, what are you talking about? But but at the same time it's not actually as scary as you think once you get in there. So, can you tell us a little bit about how sometimes the steps are smaller than we think, and that can still create a big difference?
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the biggest first steps to this whole process that we're talking about is just taking it literally one step at a time. There's probably 4 or 5 things I could tell you about right now, but, pick one and do that one thing for like 3 to 4 weeks consistently before you think about adding new things in, because I think that that makes it a lot more approachable, especially if you're trying to make sure that you're maintaining these habits you build versus trying to add all 4 or 5 new things in 1 week. And then by day 2, you're already like falling off on one of the habits. By day 3, you're falling off on 2. And by Friday, you're like not doing any of them anymore. When it comes to like some of the things that we can work on, even just strength training twice a week, like you don't even have to strength train like 3, 4, or 5 times a week. You can start with 2 days a week, full body, do a little bit of upper body, a little bit of lower body in each session. And even that will make a big difference. Strength training 2 days a week is what research has said is a minimum for making a difference in some of these changes that we're talking about today.
Yeah, it's funny. I was actually in my gym yesterday with my physical therapist, and I was we were kind of like, reassessing the plan and making a new plan kind of for the next, chapter slash season, whatever. And, I everything we were doing and every step, I'm like, okay, but so like how quick can I move up and how, what plan should I follow for like increasing and like how often? She's like, no, stop. She also knows me well, but and to be able to recognize that it's not about like the big audacious grandiose thing that we're trying to run after. It's not about more, bigger, better. It's those little steps like you're talking about. I think especially on a consistent basis, like it really has that compounding effect.
Yeah, for sure. And so some of the other ones that, like you mentioned, like what are some of these smaller steps we can take?
Yeah.
The other biggest one I think is sleep. So much happens when we're sleeping, and our body's time sleeping is really when that's our body's time to heal and repair. So getting 7 to 9 quality hours of sleep. I think that's the biggest one too, is that a lot of
Keyword.
people, yeah, keyword
Quality.
right there. That's the biggest one too, is not restless sleep, rolling over for 7 to 9 hours, in bed scrolling for the first like 2 hours of the day, but 7 to 9 quality hours of sleep can be so supportive in literally everything else you do throughout your day. And then the more active you are, the more sleep you need. So many people will be fine with 7 hours of sleep. But if you are somebody who's more active, and this could change in different seasons of your life, I definitely notice there are some times in my life where I need more sleep than other times. If that's the case, if that's a situation that's happening, maybe you lean closer to 8, 8.5, 9. But generally speaking, 7 to 9 hours for most adults is sufficient. And the more active you are, the more sleep you generally need. And then, like you said, keyword being quality sleep.
Yes, yes. That's always the elusive, where is it? Where's my quality sleep? No, I mean, there's great ways to get there through like sleep hygiene and things like that. But
Mhm.
it's really interesting that you say that because I've actually noticed that throughout like phases of my life where there are times I needed 9 hours of sleep every night, and there's times I needed, well, okay, that's a lie. There's never a time I needed 5, but I felt okay, where I
Yeah.
probably needed, like, 7. Like, I probably needed a little more. Like, I don't think anyone, well, I don't know. Do you think people can, like, be truly rejuvenated on 5 hours of sleep?
I think that there are some people who either one possibly just takes such great care of their bodies in other ways and other aspects that their body just does better with less sleep. I know there are some people who will just say that like, "Oh, I like that's just me. That's just my body. My body only needs 5 hours of sleep." And in those situations, I am curious because I don't know specifically of any like
Yeah.
research that says this, but I am curious if they've just conditioned their body over time to just tolerate or be able to function off of that much sleep. But I also have heard that there are some like, ancient practices where, and I'm talking like way, way back where, there was always somebody that had to be on guard or whatever. And like certain situations where people were only getting like 4 hours of sleep consistently in a row before they had to like get up and like take the next shift to like protect the like
Yeah.
tribe or whatever that they were living in. So I feel like there's just so many interesting avenues and aspects that you can dive into when it comes to sleep and how sleep has even evolved over the years.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's a whole other rabbit hole, I know, but I was just like, huh, I wonder. I think another, like, I mean, we'd be doing a disservice if we didn't talk about feeling as good as we can for as long as we can so that we can do what we want to do and spend our time how we want. Injuries are a big one, and they can really set us back, and they can take, I don't even know if it's setting us back, but it's just more like it takes a lot more of our time and energy to then go focus on that versus something else that we wanted to focus on. And so, what is like the biggest thing for us to know, or the most important thing around preventing injury or making sure that we can take care of ourselves in a way that we avoid it where we can? I know some of it's like some accidents are true accidents and there's, nothing we could have done better, but in the cases where we can prevent it, what would those be?
Yeah. Honestly, the best thing you can do is to see a physical therapist. Physical therapy is not only something for people who are hurt, sick, or injured, and it's become that in our society. Like it's become a stereotype that you go to physical therapy 3 times a week and that's your entire life for 6 to 8 weeks and then or however long until you're done. Physical therapy doesn't have to look like that, especially for a lot of people. I think our traditional healthcare system tends to push that narrative 3 times a week for 8 weeks and like it
Yeah.
becomes your whole life when you think about having to drive like 30 minutes to PT and then you're there for 45 minutes to an hour and then you have to drive home. It takes up like a large part of your evening, especially for someone who works like a 9 to 5. You end up being out of your house for like 12 plus hours counting work. By the
Yeah.
time you go home, you're exhausted and you're expected to do that 3 times a week. That's a lot.
Mhm.
Physical therapy doesn't have to look like that or be that way. And honestly, a lot of the people I work with, I would say probably close to 35-40% of them maybe don't have active, high levels of pain that we're working through. They may have small stuff that comes up here and there, but a lot of people I see come to see me on either a monthly or even like quarterly basis where it's just like we're popping in to do a quick movement assessment and say like, "Hey, what are some areas of improvement that you can work on right now to prevent something from happening in the future?" If you can find a physical therapist that you trust and can build a good working relationship with, and maybe you see them once a quarter, maybe you see them twice a year, just like you go to see your dentist for a cleaning, so that you're preventing cavities, you're preventing gum disease, you're preventing all of this other stuff. Same sort of situation. Go to see a physical therapist twice a year, once a quarter, however often you and your physical therapist feel like would be best for your body. Go see a physical therapist every 6 months, have them do a movement assessment with you, have them find some areas of improvement that you can work on, and they can give you things to work on mobility, stretching, strengthening exercises that you can add into whatever you're doing already. If you're already in the gym, the things they give you, you can easily incorporate into your warm-ups and your workouts so that you're staying on top of these things. We can't always guarantee that you're not going to get hurt or that you're not going to get injured, but just seeing a physical therapist once or twice a year for a movement assessment and a breakdown of how you're doing and some suggestions on things to work on can make a world of difference in preventing injuries and pain that pop up with activity, especially as you start to get older.
Yeah, for sure. I think another like favorite part for me, and maybe I'm just like a total weirdo, but with being a lifelong learner with physical therapy, I learned so much about my own body. Like, there's a muscle I learned about that I can flex. I didn't even know I had yesterday. And that was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I say that's one of the biggest probably pieces of feedback I get from the people I work with is how much education I build into each session that I
Yeah.
have with each one of my patients and clients. And that's exactly how I want like my patients to feel when I'm done working with them. It's like I want them to know and understand their bodies so much that knowledge is key, knowledge is power, right? So if you can understand your body a little bit better, you can maybe look out for some of these things before they pop up, or you can kind of say, hey, my hip's been feeling a little sticky recently in the gym. Maybe I should add back in some of those hip stretches my therapist gave me. And you know that before you even have to ask anybody or see a physical therapist or another provider, or worst case scenario, before something happens with your hip.
Right. It's so preventative to like, because it sounds like it's a few things. You're like, it's education, it's like preventative movement and strength building. But then it's also, from what I'm hearing, is like, kind of curating what you're doing based on the season
Yes.
almost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I have a lot of people. I live in Colorado too, as well, in Denver. So there's a lot of people here who are super active and what they do changes with the season. So
Yeah.
right now, there's
Really?
obviously still like skiing and snowboarding happening, but I'm already starting to get runners and hikers and mountain bikers will come soon too. And those will be all like, the spring and summer athletes around here that activities that they'll be getting into. And I will say like this time of year, I'm starting to get more runners in to my practice and we're starting to go over, okay, like here's how you can prepare your body for this next like spring and summer run season. And then kind of like by end of summer, fall, I get those people I was working with in the summer may come in for one session just to see what they can do to get their body ready for ski or snowboard season. So what you focus on too, exactly like you said, may change depending on the season that you're in. And that doesn't just go for sports either, but whether you're traveling a lot or whether you're not, whether you're home, whether you're working at a desk a lot more often. I see that too. People change jobs where they maybe once were active and now they sit at a desk all day or vice versa. And they start to notice things pop up in their bodies too, just because what their day-to-day life looked like changed.
Yeah, for sure. Is there anything like, does that only, so what we need to do every day at home to prevent injury, is that only coming from our physical therapist, or is there something like that's like universal that like everybody could do that's helpful for all of us?
The best thing that you're going to be given is going to be from somebody who can look at you specifically and
Yeah.
give you some sort of suggestions based off you and your body, because everybody's body is built differently. Everybody's bodies go through different things. Like we all have our own backgrounds and stories. And the best suggestions you're going to get is going to be from going to somebody who can look at you individually. However, just in general, I feel like back pain is one of the most common things that you see as a provider. I think something like between 80 and 90% of people will experience some bout of back pain at some point in time in their life. Hip pain is a really common one, neck pain, also a really common one. I would say those are probably the top. Knee pain.
Yeah, so just finding exercises like that strengthen those areas basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard with pain to like, it's like a doctor hopping on a call with your doctor and saying, hey, I'm having XYZ symptom. What medication can you give me? Like your doctor is going to want more information from you. They might want to, you know, see specifically for you, okay, I can't just give you X medication and hope that fixes it without knowing more about you personally. So that's why it is hard just to give general exercise recommendations when it comes to managing pain, because we do really call it like exercise prescription. Like it is a
Yeah.
prescription for you and your body, which is why it is best to see someone specifically for what you're going through. If we want to get more general, like I mentioned before, like strength training is one of the absolute best things you could do for your body. So strength training minimum of twice a week, amazing. Focusing on sleep, amazing. making sure you're eating enough food, making sure you're prioritizing getting protein and micronutrients. So those smaller like vitamins and minerals that we need throughout our day with the foods that we eat, that's going to be amazing for your body too. So a lot of the things that I can generalize that will help support pain are some of those things that everyone can benefit from
Yeah.
following these kind of standard tools and precautions and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and it just makes so much sense because like I know the different things that I'm working on right now and have worked on throughout my time with physical therapy, which has been on and off at different consistent or different cadences over the years of, like you said, sometimes it's quarterly, sometimes it's weekly, sometimes it's monthly. So they they're always specific to like injuries I've had or different traumas I've had, or like I think one thing you said earlier was like the shape of your, like all bodies are shaped differently. So like I have wide hips and, my feet want to turn out, right? And so things like that of like, how do we do it differently so that it works for us? And what I really appreciate and really like too about like having someone like right there with you looking at your body and like critiquing also like how you're doing the movement is like if you just go online, like if I just pull up right now, like whatever, and pretend I wasn't a yoga teacher in the
Mhm.
past, and I pulled up some, yoga move or some stretch that I want to do, and I just go do it. There may or may not be a lot that still needs to be corrected, either for proper posture or for my specific body type, right? And so those are the things too that I receive in physical therapy is I think I'm doing exactly what the picture says in physical therapy, and there's still so much to change, and I'm like, "What? I'm not doing it still." Like,
Yeah.
or like the 17th time she has to say during an RDL, "Keep your feet on the floor." And I don't even realize I'm doing it. So if you were just to do that on your own, pull up a picture and follow that exercise, you're not actually going to get the most out of it, or you could further injure yourself too, which we talk about injury preventative. That's a big one.
Yeah, definitely. I think you brought up a good point too, is like that's one of the things that I think PT has made a big shift in. And I'll say PT, but also rehab in
Mm,
general
yeah.
is the need to always like need to physically be there in the space with somebody. There's been so much, especially since 2020 when COVID hit. Like, I mean, at the time I was working for someone else, and there was at one point where our company went completely virtual. So it doesn't even need to be like physically with you in the space, but having
True,
somebody to
true,
hold
yeah.
you accountable, somebody to, whether you're on a Zoom call with them performing exercises and movements, and they can do a breakdown of your form and look at range of motion and strength deficits and things like that. Or whether it's like, I know sometimes like my clients will just like send me a video of them doing something. And honestly, that's sometimes even more helpful because you don't have to sit there and do like 10 reps of something that hurts. You can do a video of you doing 1 or 2 reps, and then I can pause and rewind and as much as I
Yeah.
need to.
Cool.
But there's so much access and so many tools and resources that this industry has now to use to help people. Especially, I know a lot of people that I have worked with virtually have been like living in the middle of nowhere, and they're like, my closest PT clinic is literally 45 minutes away. So they're like, this is so much better for me. But I think that either way, whether it's in person or whether it's through digital resources and services now, like having access to a provider who can work with you and help to, exactly like you said, make sure you're doing movements the right way, or even make sure you're loading the movement properly. Like you mentioned, your PT helps you with a lot of like progressions and I'm sure regressions, and helping you to manage your load, like telling you, okay, hey, like slow down a little bit, rein it in, like we're gonna focus on this, like, and then we'll work through steps like 2 through 6 or whatever.
Yeah.
Because it's not only about like, are you doing the right exercises, but it's also, are you doing the right exercises for your body in a way that's going to work for you? Are you loading the exercises properly? Are you progressing the exercises properly? There's so many aspects that go into creating a program for somebody that's going to help them manage their pain, that as much as we like, as content creators, love posting like content online for people to watch and see and learn things from, that's only the surface. Like there's so much more that goes deeper
Yeah,
into like the full process of helping somebody manage pain through movement and exercise.
absolutely. It's just the appetizer. There's a whole 5-course meal beyond that.
Yes,
And
for
then
sure.
dessert and wine and
Mhm.
are we wine approved? I'm just kidding.
I'm never an all or nothing. I'm a very big fan of the 80-20 rule.
I appreciate that. I have like a different variety of daily reading books that I read through. I kind of rotate through them, but the one I read this morning was talking about, that the old adage, and now I'm not even going to remember exactly how it's phrased, but it's that idea, like if you're not flexible, you're more able to break. So I love that you said I'm not all or nothing, because that is like such a skill and such a blessing and a gift to like share as a PT, because I am all or nothing. Not as like as the client of the PT.
Yeah.
But to be, reminded of that and have that grounding to be like, hey, remember, it kind of like brings you back to that place of what actually matters and why.
Yeah, for sure. I think that exactly like you said, when you are all or nothing, it's a very easy way to set yourself up for a failure. I don't really like using the word, but like, not being able to reach your goals.
Yeah.
But I think
Stagnation.
I think if we're able to find balance, because I always tell my clients, my patients, when I'm working with them, like, is this something you could do for the rest of your life? Like, can you cut out this activity or add this activity or cut out this food or add this food? And could you do that for the rest of your life? It's like, if not, then that's not really sustainable. And like, maybe we need to allow ourselves that little bit of room to enjoy life and be able to be social with friends and family. Because especially when it comes to like food and drinking and things like that, like so much of it is part of our culture, part of our social time with friends and family. And I think that there's always a way for people to find like a balance with that sort of thing.
Totally. And speaking of family and our, our home lives and everything else that goes along with that, what about stress when we talk about longevity? Like, how does that connect into all of this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Stress can definitely have a big impact on pain. I see it so many times when somebody I'm working with comes in and they're like, hey, like I'm having more back pain today or this week. I've been having more back pain. I'll always try to dive in and ask more questions to get a little bit more clear on what's been going on outside of just the movements and exercises they're doing. So I'll ask them about work. I'll ask them about their personal life. Were they traveling? Did they just get back from a big trip? Or, is there a lot going on in personal relationships, family relationships that are maybe contributing a little bit more stress to you that day, that week, that month? Because stress does impact a few different things. It impacts your sleep, which we know how important sleep is. We've talked about that, but it also impacts your nervous system. And if we are stressed out, and that's causing our nervous system to sit in a little bit of a heightened position. The longer our nervous system sits in that heightened position or heightened state, it makes us more sensitive to pain. Our pain receptors within our body actually become more sensitive to the sensations of pain, and things that didn't used to previously cause pain may start to become a little bit more irritating now. And so you'll maybe sometimes notice that with, let's say, you're doing an exercise and you've done this exercise for the past month, and then now all of a sudden this exercise bothered you. And so people will automatically go to, oh, this exercise is bad because it caused pain, or why is this exercise causing pain when I've done this exercise in the past? And it's not always the movement or exercise itself, but are there just other factors going on in your life that are maybe causing more stress, that's making your nervous system more heightened, that's making your pain receptors more sensitive?
Yeah, that is so interesting how that can happen. It's like what almost makes me wonder is like, is it something that like was going on with that movement. You just didn't feel it before. Now you feel it. And then maybe you're mad because you're thinking, oh, I don't want to feel this way. But what if it's actually like a good thing? Because like now you can be more in tune to what's
Yeah.
happening.
I think that's another good point too, is that not all pain is bad. Pain doesn't always mean that you're doing damage or harm to your body. And I think that some people think that any pain, I think you find people on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
People think that any pain is bad and it means that you're doing harm to your body and you should avoid pain at all costs. And then those people who will push past any sort of pain and ignore it.
That was me for a long time.
And so,
Like, if I'm not in pain, I'm not gaining anything.
yeah, which we don't necessarily want either. You want to
No.
kind of you want to kind of find that happy middle ground where like you're using pain as a tool or resource and information. Like pain is really
Yeah.
good information, but you're not avoiding it completely and you're not ignoring it completely.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. How do we find that balance between like not overdoing it? Like for me, I'm a really good sprinter. I can go really hard, really fast for a little bit. And and I think that that's productive, but then like if I do something really intensely for a long time, let's say for my professional career,
Mhm.
I and then I go spend the entire weekend, like Friday night, Saturday day, night, and then Sunday day and night, like in bed or on the couch because I'm in so much pain and I can't move. That's not actually fair to me or my personal life. So, like, how do we find that balance of like not overdoing it, right? But like, because I think a lot of people, especially listening to this podcast, are probably overdoers more than underdoers.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think because most people that are listening to this podcast and most people that I work with as well are more of those overdoers rather than underdoers. It can be very hard sometimes, but our body talks to us and our body tells us things.
But
We
yeah,
just have to make sure that we're listening to it. And I think a lot of times we find that the people who are those overdoers, the signs are likely there. It's just whether or not we're listening to them. And sometimes it is a matter of slowing down to listen to your body and to listen to those signs. And then when you do that, they start to become more present. And maybe it's not something that comes natural to you because it can take a little bit of working through or some experience before you start to acknowledge, like, oh, on Wednesday, I'm starting to feel this. I know Thursday and Friday, I should probably chill out a little bit. Not to say that you're going from one extreme to the other, but you're just kind of
yeah,
managing your load throughout the week on your body and your stress throughout the week on your body so that by the time Saturday and Sunday comes around, you're not on the couch all day or in bed all day because you've just completely blew through all of your energy and capacity for that week. And so slowing down a little bit, checking in with your body throughout the week, throughout the day, and building more time in to slow down, especially if you know that you're somebody who is one of those people who goes hard for 3 or 4 days in a row and then you're just crashing. Schedule in, maybe I'm doing like 15 minutes of mobility and stretching instead of, 45 minutes of cardio. I do 30 minutes of cardio and 15 minutes of mobility and stretching. Or maybe if I'm working at my desk for 8 hours a day and I feel like crap after, maybe I'm scheduling in a 10 to 15-minute walk during my lunch break. And then I'm going to make sure I get up 1 to 2 times throughout my day just to move and stretch. So then by the end of my day, I don't feel like crap. Things like that. I think just if you are on the side of overdoing it, like intentionally scheduling in things that are going to support your body throughout the week, maybe force you to slow down a little bit so that by the end of the week, you don't feel so exhausted that you're just sitting on the couch all day. And then when you find that balance over time, like you'll know like, okay, at least 2 days this week, I need to do some stretching and mobility. At least once a day, I need to get up and go on a 10-minute walk. Like you'll start to find that balance after a little while. Like it may take a couple weeks of navigating it and working through it, but eventually, as I think you start to integrate some of those practices, some of those things into your day, into your week, you'll find your groove and it'll be different for everybody.
totally. It was actually one of the coolest things that I experienced on that journey of like realizing how to do less. And I think that that's hard for our audience to hear to say like, don't do 45, do 30. And right. And I like prior me would like easily be able to plan on the calendar that I was going to do less, but then overachiever me would go in and like do 100 more things because it would feel so good to like overachieve and feel so productive, right? And it's trusting yourself enough to actually stay to that plan of doing a bit less to then find your boundaries, because it took me a long time. I mean, if I'm being honest, I probably still haven't fully found mine. Let's just be real. It's an ever evolving journey, I feel like. But, you start to find your limits and your boundaries and like what you're actually capable of and where you need to pause, or like you said, do a mobility stretch and slow down and take care of yourself.
Yeah, for sure. And I think too, a lot of the times the people that fall into the overdoing it category are also underdoing it on a lot of the other things we talked about, like sleep, stress management, nutrition, all that. When
Oh,
you
yeah.
support your body more with that stuff, your
Yeah.
ability to do more without those negative impacts or effects becomes greater. So not only are you like managing your load and your capacity throughout the week, but if you're also paying attention and being mindful about all that other stuff in your day to day, your ability to do more without, you know, extra stress on your body becomes greater. Your ability to handle more with less negative impacts increases, and you're able to do more without all those negative side effects. So it's almost like you're giving yourself more access to being like, achieving more, doing more, things like that.
Yes. And I know I'm not the only one who felt called out when you said you're underdoing with your sleep, with your, right? Those other areas. I was like, oh, yeah, that was definitely, because even when you look back to like when I was like barely sleeping, like I felt like I was overdoing. Well, I mean, I was overdoing in certain areas, but then I don't think I would have even considered underdoing, because it's such like the idea of like, oh, less sleep is like so strong and tough and right? Which is like
Yeah,
not even true.
exactly.
So you have shared incredible wisdom with us here today. What do you think is the one thing that you want to make sure everyone hears walking away from this episode, or that they go do, or they go shift their mindset around? What is the one most important thing you think from this conversation?
I think the one piece of knowledge, or the one like mindset shift that I would want everyone to walk away from today, is we touched on this a little bit earlier, but looking into the future, like not just next week or next month, but looking into the future 20, 30, 40 years from now, and
Yeah.
really thinking about what you want your life to look like. Because what you want your life to look like, what you'll be able to do, the quality of life that you'll have, the memories that you'll be able to make with the people around you that you love, all depends on what you start doing today. And when you think about the projects or work or like your training schedule and being so tedious with everything that you're doing your day-to-day life, think about the bigger picture of what you want your life to look like 40 years from now, and just know and be mindful of every decision you make today affects tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, and the next 20 years.
Absolutely. Well, I couldn't agree more. And this has been such a gift. And you've given us so much to think about and go try and do, and PTs to go look up and in our areas, or not if we want to do virtual, right? And so, I really appreciate you being here today and really showing us like it is in our control and there's something we can do about it. We don't have to just, lay back and take what society says is considered aging. We can actually do something about it, and there's so much more in our control than we realize. So thank you for showing us that and showing us that we can spend our time how we want to spend it.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I think this was a great conversation.
Of course. And where can they find you if they want to connect with you or look you up? Are you on social media?
Yeah. So Mostly on Instagram, I would say. And my Instagram name is Britni, Britni. I also do share a lot of exercises, movements, stretches, especially for like high achievers who are on the go a lot, working a lot, sitting at a desk a lot, and just easy, short ways that you can get up and move throughout your day that can make a big difference. But then again, like I said, if you are somebody who is dealing with something a little bit more serious, like it is always beneficial to reach out to somebody, whether it's locally or somebody you can work with online that can help you specifically navigate and work through some of the things that your body may be experiencing specifically.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Britni. It was so great to have you today.
Thank you for braving the inside of your mind with me. The better we understand ourselves, the more deeply we understand the world, and as our awareness grows, life just gets better and better. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a review and share this with anyone else you think could benefit from listening. A quick reminder that the content shared in this podcast is for informational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, and the discussions here are not a substitute for professional advice. If you're dealing with a specific issue or need personalized guidance, please consult with a qualified professional. Your well-being is important, and this podcast is simply a platform for sharing insights and experiences. I appreciate you spending this time with me. Until next time.